Okay, this video is going to address the signs that Hashem gives Moshe at the beginning of chapter 4 of Shemot, in the beginning of Perek Dalet. So we saw at the beginning of Perek Dalet that Moshe expresses concern. V'hen lo yaminu li lo yishma'u b'koli. They're not going to believe me. They're not going to listen to my voice. Ki yomru lo nira'eh lecha Hashem. They're going to say Hashem didn't appear to you. So Hashem responds by giving Moshe 3 signs that he can do. First of all, Hashem tells him to take the mateh, the staff that's in his hand, throw it on the ground, and it'll become. And when Moshe throws it down, vayhila nachash, it becomes a snake or a serpent. It actually startles Moshe. Vayanos Moshe mipanav. Moshe sort of runs away from it or recoils from it. It's sign number 1, the mateh. Sign number 2, Hashem tells Moshe to put his hand in his bosom. That's called the Napoleon move, like that, the hand in the shirt. Moshe does it, he takes it out. V'hinei yado mitzarat kasher, like his hand gets all white like snow with tzarat, with leprosy. And he then puts his hand in again, it gets healed. And finally, the last oath is to take the waters of the Nile, meimei hayor, v'shafachta hayabasha, pour them out on dry land. So this water that you take out of the Yaor will become dam, blood, when it's on dry land. Okay, that's as far as we're going to go in this video, through Pasuk Tet. So what is the symbolism behind these 3 signs? Is it just 3 miracles? So Moshe has 3 attempts to convince them God sent them with a miracle? Or is there a deeper meaning to these miracles? And as part of our attempt to find a deeper meaning, we raise the question of whether we can actually group them into different groups. So let's take a look over here in this chart that we made. Let's expand it a little bit. Okay, now we can see it nice and clear. So we asked certain questions, like, of these signs, which ones does Moshe do in Midian? And even though I said Midian here, I think we acknowledged in class, maybe I should have said Bechorev instead, because he's really doing them on Har Sinai, Har Chorev. What I meant is he does them now as opposed to just when he gets to Egypt. So the stick becoming the Nachash, he does right there. Right? God said to him on the spot, take that staff of yours and throw it down, and Moshe does that. What about Sarat on Moshe's hand? So that one also, he does it over there at Har Chorev. Hashem tells him, take your hand right now and put your hand right now into your bosom. So Moshe does it right there. Whereas the water going into the blood, that seems to only be done in Mitzrayim. God simply instructs Moshe right now that if they don't accept the other ones, then when you get to Egypt, you can do this. Right? If they don't believe these 2 otot, they don't obey you, then you can take the waters of the Or and pour them onto the dry land. So that's one way in which this 3rd oat stands out. Secondly, we asked, does the nes, is it choser lebriato? Does it return to its natural state? So the first 2 very much do, right? Moshe takes his staff over here, and we're told afterwards, when it's a snake, God tells Moshe, Shlach yadcha v'echos biznavo, grab its tail, or the end of the snake. Moshe grabs it, it becomes a mateh again in his hand. So the miracle gets undone. So too with his hand. Moshe's hand doesn't stay with Sarat. After the fact, God tells Moshe again, return your hand to your bosom. Moshe takes it out again, and it's returned to have it in the regular flesh, basar, it's nice and healthy, right? It's no longer afflicted with Sarat. Whereas the water, all God tells him is, it'll be blood on dry land. There's no indication that Moshe is then gonna turn this blood back into water. Some of you pointed out in class correctly that when he does the plague of dam to the Egyptians, so it doesn't stay blood forever. After a week, it goes back to being water. But here, for this one-time miracle he's supposed to do for Bnei Israel, if he needs it, so that they'll believe that Hashem sent him, it sounds like he just pours out a little bit of water, it turns to blood, and then I guess it gets absorbed into the ground, and that's it. Thirdly, we asked, Haim chayav Moshe lasod ra'ot? Does Moshe have to do it? When God talks to Moshe here, is God telling Moshe, when you get to Egypt, do this? In other words, you must do this? Or is God telling Moshe, when you get to Egypt, if you feel that you need an extra miracle, you might want to consider doing this? So the first one that God says, he says it like an instruction. Maza b'yadecha, what's in your hand? Moshe said a mateh. God says, okay, take your mateh and do this. And so it sounds like Moshe just has to do it. The second one also, right after God gives him that first miracle, right? Says that first miracle is total trust that Hashem, the God of the fathers, appeared to them. Then right away in Pasuk Vav, God says, also put your hand in your bosom. He doesn't say you might want to consider doing it, think about doing it. He just says do it. So the first two, God clearly says to do them. Whereas the third one, he says as follows. If they don't believe either of these first two signs, and they won't obey your voice, they won't listen to your voice, then, if all that, then you can take water from the Or and pour it out on dry land. So it sounds like you can use this third one if necessary. It's like when they release the schedule for the World Series, and they say there are going to be 4 games of the World Series, and then Game 5, Game 6, Game 7, there's a star next to them, this little asterisk saying, if necessary, because it could be that one team sweeps the series in 4 games. So similarly over here, it could be Moshe dazzles them with the first 2 otot, and then there's no need for the third ot, because after the first 2, they're convinced Hashem sent him. In fact, when Moshe goes to Egypt, we're going to see later, all it says is Vayasa otot, he did the otot. The Torah is not clear if he did all 3, if he only did the first 2. But it sounds like the first 2 are mandatory, whereas the third one, Moshe will do it if he feels after the first 2 that they're not totally convinced, he sees they still have some doubt, then he does the third one. But if not, again, so the third ot here is like the 5th game of the World Series. It's only played if necessary. And this led us, so all these 3 things, what we see if you filled out your chart properly, is that these 2 go together. The first 2 otot are done at Har Chorev, at Har Sinai, and then again, he can do them in Egypt. The first 2, he does a miracle, right, turning the staff into a snake or the hand, and healthy hand into a hand with leprosy, and then he returns it to its natural state. It goes back to being a staff or back to being a healthy hand, and he must do them. Whereas the third one, he doesn't do it until he gets to Egypt. Even then, he doesn't have to do it. It's optional. And it's never going to go back to being water. So clearly the Torah is telling us in all these ways that the third ot is separate. Before we get to the last column in the chart, right, so clearly we just answered question 1 over here, that it's clear that they divide into 2 groups by putting the first 2 otot together, and the third one is separate. Pasuk Chet seems to support that because it uses the word acharon. So we looked over here in Pasuk Chet, and we saw that God tells Moshe, if they don't listen to the first ot, they'll trust you, they'll believe in the ot ha'acharon. Right? If they don't trust the first one, he should say, then they'll trust the second one. He's referring here to the second one, the miracle of the tzara'at, as the ot ha'acharon. Now, what does the word acharon typically mean? So, Ibn Ezra tells us over here the following. Amar katuva ot ha'acharon calls it the ot ha'acharon, afal pi sheyesh ot shlishi, even though there's a third one, right? Normally we wouldn't call the second one acharon if there's a third, because Ibn Ezra assumes acharon means last. So why are you calling the second one the last one? Right, for now, God only showed him these 2. The third one, Moshe is going to do at some point in the future. He hasn't done it here. So Ibn Ezra says, since Moshe only did the first 2 miracles here at Har Chorev, at Har Sinai, that's why the second one is called the Acharon, the last one. If the word Acharon means last, we could also add to that, it could really be the last one because Moshe only has to do the first 2. And so it seems that the word Acharon, which typically means last over here because the first 2 are a group. It's the end of that group. It might be the last one altogether. Now on Al HaTorah, we can check this by clicking on the dictionary. And lo and behold, it tells us that typically Acharon means often means the last one. But So acharon often means later or last, and that's what Ibn Ezra is assuming here. If we assume that, then then the very fact that the Torah calls the second ot the ot acharon adds to our evidence that the first two are a group, where the second one is the last one, and the third one stands out. I did point out, some of you did this for extra credit, there are some cases, even though usually acharon means the last one, there are cases where it just means the next one behind in a group. The most famous example is actually not given over here, but we'll use our concordance over here to look this one up. This first example in the concordance. The concordance lists in order all the times the word is used in Tanakh. So, first time this word is used in Bereshit, it says that Yaakov organized his kids to meet Esav. He put the kids of the Shvachot, the kids of Bilhah and Zilpah first. Then they and their kids were Rishonah. And then Leah and her kids Acharonim. And then Rachel and Yosef Acharonim. So Acharon can't mean last both times, because if Rachel and Yosef are last, that means Leah and her kids who are in front of Rachel were not last. So it's generally accepted in this case that it means just the next ones in order, right? So the Shvachot, Bilhah and Zilpah and their kids were first, Rishonah. Then Leah and her kids were next, Acharonim. And Rachel and Yosef were the next ones after that, Acharonim. So it could be that the word Acharon here just means the next one in order. But if we assume, like it usually means, that it means last, then that leads us to the conclusion that the first two are a group. The second sign is therefore called the Acharon, the last one. And after that, there's this third one, which is only going to be done if necessary. So the second ot could really be the last ot. Now, with all that information in hand, that raises one more question, which is perhaps the key question here. If the first two have all these things that set them apart from the third, why is that? Perhaps the first two have some deeper meaning, some special meaning, which the third one doesn't, which is why we care that Moshe do them once already at Har Sinai, and we care that they be done for sure in Egypt, no matter what. Even if people believe the first one, you have to do the second one too. So Rashi explains the symbolism focused on column 1 here of our examples, focused on the fact that Moshe has to do them himself at Har Sinai. Says Rashi, that tells me that the first two are meant to punish Moshe. And so the reason he has to do these already at Har Sinai is that in addition to being miracles for Bnei Israel, they're also a punishment for him. So says Rashi, why the snake? Ramazlo shesiper lashon hara al Yisrael. It's hinting to Moshe that he spoke lashon hara. Right? Moshe began this whole parak by saying, they're not going to listen to me. They're not going to believe in me. They're going to say God didn't appear to you. That's not a nice thing to say, especially considering that towards the end of the previous parak, God had told Moshe that you're going to go to Egypt, and you know what's going to happen? V'sham'u kolecha. They're going to listen to you. God told Moshe, V'sham'u kolecha, Bnei Yisrael are going to listen to you, and now Moshe says, hey, and lo yaminu li v'lo yishmu b'koli, they're not going to listen to me. So, says Rashi, Moshe is slandering, speaking lashon hara about them, and that's reminiscent of the snake in Gan Eden, the snake who cast aspersions on the reasons why God didn't let Adam and Chava eat from the Eitz Hadat. He portrayed God in a negative light, and that's how he convinced Chava to eat from the forbidden fruit. Moshe is doing the same thing here. He's slandering Bnei Israel. One could also suggest, though that's not what Rashi said, he's also slandering God, right? Because God said, Sham'u lekolecha, they will listen to you, and Moshe says, Lo yishmu b'koli. So he's also sort of challenging the credibility of God. But Rashi focuses here on the part about slandering Bnei Israel, I think because it looks bad for a leader to be the one who is slandering Bnei Israel. Similarly, Rashi points out the word mazeh biyadecha, what is this, is spelled in the Torah like one word, which looks like mizeh. So says Rashi, that's a hint, mizeh, from this which is in your hand, it's going to be your downfall, right? You're slandering Bnei Israel, so the staff that you have in your hand will be your downfall. Someday when you hit the rock with it, you're going to be punished for that. And then, of course, tzarat, we all know, is associated with lashon hara. God says you're going to get afflicted with tzarat, just like later Miriam is going to get tzarat for slandering Moshe. So in all these ways, Rashi says these two stand out. The first two otot stand out. Moshe has to do them now, and he has to do them because they represent criticism of Moshe in addition to what they do for Bnei Israel. In a separate video, we will see Ibn Ezra's approach.